Let's get started with enhanced senses. Another one of the most common powers you will ever come across in media, real world, and any kind of fiction found on our tiny blue planet. Users of this power possess powerful senses that are beyond that of a normal member of the species. This obviously includes the classic 5 senses that we all know and love: sight, hearing, touch, taste, and smell. And I think you guys can figure out what I'm going to do next. So I won't disappoint. A sense, in its simplest terms, is a faculty by which the body perceives an external stimulus or stimuli. I don't know how to break that down anymore in regards to simplicity. It's pretty well known that the faculties of sight, smell, hearing, taste, and touch are mainly perception-based abilities. And while not everybody has all 5 senses working completely, they are familiar with at least one of them. At least one. You got me. And just like the real world and fictional concepts that this power is based off of, being the benevolent Shay that I am, I need to warn you guys to at least clean your ears, eyes, and whip out whatever sonar you guys have in your possession, because the info past this point is going to and will hide from you. Is it shy, or is it extremely stealthy? I really don't know. But what I do know that in order to detect it, you guys are definitely going to need to be able to hit that like and subscribe button. That's right, you guys can gain the exclusive ability to hear heartbeats, taste sweat across the room, as well as detect subtle movements from the most silent and deadly of gas, passing. But if you guys are just here for the applications, uses, and users of this power, let's skip ahead to this time. But if you guys were born with natural filters, eagle eyes, or just avoid the stinky among us, then at least hit that share button so you can inform others that this is where the funk is. So stupid. This power will be pretty dang easy to provide some background on. Well, kind of, sort of, in the general sense. Don't ask me what the origins of senses are, but you are looking for an answer. Then I would say look no further than the legends and myths of beings whose ability to discern the impossible either inspired fear and or reverence. Obviously, this includes various gods and anti-gods of numerous cultures, with most monotheistic religions having beings that are straight up omniscient. But a more grounded example of myths, as funny as that sounds, are psychics, shamans, mystics, prophetic saints, and even taboo-based necromancers and or spirit mediums. All those titles share the same theme of using or tapping into something that gives them the ability to divine, or simply put, sense things beyond normal human capabilities. But if you think it stops there, you still aren't thinking deep enough, as perhaps the most comparable and providable example of the concept of enhanced senses are the animals that exist in or outside your house. It's well known that various cultures of the past, some that still may exist today, have used animals for inspirations in aspects of various forms of survival, which loosely explains the various symbolic meanings associated with animals that persist up until today. Now, it would be better to get this part out the way. When people think of senses, they think of the obvious 5 physical senses. So let's list them and let's get that out the way. The sense of smell is the faculty or power of perceiving odors or scents by means of the organs in the nose. Taste, however, is the sensation of flavor perceived in the mouth and throat on contact with the particular substance, while touch is the faculty of perception through physical contact, especially with the fingers or other sensory type organs like tentacles or claws or something like that, I don't know. Sight is the faculty or power of seeing, normally associated with the eyes. And lastly, hearing is the faculty or power of perceiving sounds. The one thing that all these different senses share is that no matter how they do it, they transfer information to the brain. This ability is so portrayed in popular culture so often and so casually that anyone can recognize it. And unlike the other more common stock superpowers like enhanced strength or enhanced speed, this ability is seen as less impressive because of its subtlety factor. But when I tell you guys that this power can be considered the metaphorical Matt Groening of superpowers, it ain't hyperbole. Enhanced senses has spawned uncountable amounts of offshoot powers, all of them who can't seem to get out of its shadow. That's right, all the way from simple tracking to X-ray vision to rebuilding a crime scene through touch, all the way to divination and clairvoyance, with the most powerful version of this ability being omniscience. But like stated earlier, Even at its most basic level, simple creatures like bloodhounds bred for hunting can achieve something similar to this, which places this power in the Charles Atlas category of superpowers, as many forms of media portray this ability as one that anyone can achieve through training or some kind of physical enlightenment. And funny enough, this power adheres to this trope possibly more than any other because in our real world, we have examples of creatures losing one sense and then training the remaining to compensate for the lack of the one they lost. But as weird and outrageous as this is, enhanced senses do exist in our world, with certain conditions, obviously, like everything else. An example I can think of off the top of my head would be hyperacusis, aka unusually acute hearing, and super tasting, which is also called having a perfect palate. One's obviously more preferred than the other, but who knows. But beyond that, this power has shaped the world and how we interact with it more than any other power in every metaphysical, metatextual, esoteric, and philosophical manner. Everything is connected to sensory input and output, aka communication. But because the exchange of information is essential for survival, even if whatever you use wouldn't be considered your conventional form of hearing and or seeing, everything that needs it has it, normally. But getting into the deeper part of this power and the concept that is based off of, just because humans were created with them doesn't mean we understood them. And with the knowledge that we have now, I know for a fact that our predecessors lived extremely miserable lives. No, I wasn't gonna say that. I was gonna say limited, but that gets the point across enough. So in order to understand, they turned to something they could understand. Animals. It's no secret that certain animals are associated with certain senses. In the sense. That particular species mentioned was known for a trait that defined how that animal interacted with the world. And that explains the concept, well, at least to me, of various cultures mimicking the way and or manner that these animals lived and or operated. Okay, example time. I know. The most important sense that you guys voted for was sight. Well, there are numerous animals that possess a supernatural form of this sense when compared to how it operates with humans. The first one that comes to mind for me is an eagle, or any member of the avian family. But eagles in particular are known for having an eyesight estimated to be at least 4 to 8 times stronger than that of the average human, which is why we coined the term eagle eye, which refers to someone with exceptional eyesight. Or, like mentioned earlier, when we think of smell, although there are endless animals that fit in this category, we associate members of the canine family with that faculty. When we think of hearing, canines are included in that too, but other runner-ups include bats, moles, and creatures that use echolocation on average. When we think of taste, however, it sends off a gluttonous vibe, so I'd associate it with swine, aka pigs, which is where you get the term of calling someone who eats to excess or who has insatiable desires a pig. Or a lesser known example is the catfish, whose entire body acts like a taste bud, numbering in the hundreds of thousands, allowing for tasting at a distance, compared to humans who only on average have around, tens of thousands? And lastly, touch. This one is weird because not all species touch the same. Or a better term to give this sense would be feeling, aka the ability to feel what they're interacting with. Some animals have whiskers, hair, spikes, or spines that give them spatial information. Some creatures have hands that interact with the world like primates or those descended from them, while others have a combination of the previously mentioned. And the most extreme example of this that I can think of is the manatee, whose sense of touch or feeling is so strong that it is believed that it can feel things from a distance. I don't know how you do that. But moving on from there, while still being on the same subject, this faculty also has an emotional connotation to it as well, as something that you interact with physically would have an effect on what you psychologically feel, obviously. This is where the concepts such as empaths, beings that can feel or sense the emotions of others, i.e. emotional support animals, or the idea of imprinting where one can bond to another and take on its traits in unpredictable ways, basically come from. Oddly enough, even though that each individual sense, is its own unique thing, they feed off each other in a way to where they make a working system, which explains why certain senses can get confused for each other, such as touch and taste, because they share the sensation of feeling, and why others, such as, smell and taste, are normally intertwined, so if one faculty isn't working, the other is usually affected in a negative way. But in the case of one being taken away, such as sight and or hearing, the respective opposite will make up the difference as best as it can. basically establishing the rule that if one gets disabled in a detrimental way, the others will step up and make up the difference. So, if our sensory output works in near synchronicity while making room to calculate for factors such as, injury and outside pollutants, it would make sense why no single creature has all their senses turned all the way up at once. And that aspect makes a perfect weakness or danger for a possessor of this power. Because in most cases, the writer and/or medium usually ignores the drawback of super senses. These characters are rarely overloaded by too much sensory information, a crowd of talking people or sound bouncing off the walls and hitting them right back in the face. Or, in the case of having the super touchies, if you will normally not react to pain in a way that's expected of someone who can feel so much. The silver lining that does help justify this is explained by the required secondary superpowers that require sensory fine-tuning. For example, a superhero can either unconsciously or reflectively tune out certain amplitudes or frequency of a noise, or an enhanced toucher, being able to turn off pain and increase pleasure, which makes them essentially fearless. Moving on from there, associating senses with concrete mediums, like the animals mentioned previously, is all well and good, but we shouldn't forget about other abstract substances or powers that already exist. For example, sight is linked with light manipulation and darkness manipulation. Check out those videos, the links are in the description. While other senses like hearing are associated with sound-based powers, so following that train, temperature or physical or mental-based powers would deal with the sensation of feeling, like touch, taste, and smell. And FYI, the last three mentioned are usually the most sensual and tactile of all the other senses, so they're good for characters that fit an extremely worldly or hedonistic lifestyle. But, and I cannot express this part enough, it is extremely common to see this power paired with an animal person of any and every type. That's right, all the way from your Wolverines to your Sabretooths, all the way down to your sillier characters like Scooby-Doo. And because sensory powers are so commonly portrayed, there's no common way that the origin story of how an individual achieved this power can be portrayed. It's normally given to a character intentionally through some kind of science serum, body control manipulation, or experiment. It can be because of technology or an actual plot device used to progress the story. That's how meta you can get with a seemingly simple power like this. With the go-to way of displaying this ability is by showing and not telling. And depending on what sense you choose to show it in, it can range from simple lie detection to detecting spoiled food to the outrageous like hearing a butterfly sneeze across the planet or a star going supernova, which is bull. Now, I want to set the record straight with this and state off top that there are numerous classifications of enhanced senses, and those range from peak human all the way to absolute. We won't be covering those in this video, because those are subtabs within the folder of enhanced senses. And to be honest with you guys, listing every application is not going to work for this video. So in order to not get lost, I'm going to keep it pretty simple. Now, with the power of enhanced senses comes the natural ability to use those senses in order to access higher levels of analytical and observational skills, as well as possessing a keen eye for details via enhanced perception. From here, we can just go ahead and list the standard 5 senses. Enhanced hearing allows the user to hear with amazing clarity despite distance and even frequencies outside the normal range of hearing for a member of their species. With enhanced smells, users can detect specific persons, objects, substances, or even places, locate their origin, and track targets with nothing but their nose. While enhanced taste grants the user an extremely sensitive sense of taste, allowing them to sense both harmful and beneficial things, as all basic tastes are classified as either aversive or appetitive, which depends on the effect that they have on our body. An example of this being sweetness helps to identify energy-rich foods, while bitterness serves as a warning sign for poisons and contamination. Not in all cases, but there's a general guideline. Enhanced touch grants the user an exceptionally good sense of touch, which allows them to detect specific persons, objects, substances, or even places, locate their origin, and track them with nothing but the tip of their fingers, or whatever tactile sensory organs they possess. While users of enhanced vision possess vision beyond that of an average member of their species, or that can be achieved by their fellow members of their species, allowing them to see in amazing detail and clarity despite distance, color, or potential light source. Heck, they might even be able to see into a different spectrum of light or into another dimension. So, with all that said and done, the combination of all those abilities can and will give the user an enhanced condition, which will put you beyond that of your peers. If a user of this ability is an expert in the previous powers, it wouldn't be that hard of a stretch to say that they should and would be able to use all their sensory faculties at once. This perfect level of synchronicity leaves you with no chance of strain, no chance of confusion, because if you can't understand something with one sense, you can with the other senses, and doesn't have to filter out unnecessary sensory details because to this ability, all information is good information via enhanced synthesis. With massive amounts of information coming in, you'll need time to process it. And if you don't have the time, then the user needs to be able to compensate by taking in the tiniest amounts of details in a near instant, while still having enough time to be able to actually act on it with hyper awareness. And since your sense detection is working in hyperdrive with your immediate surroundings, it would make sense that at the level above that, you should be able to project your senses over a much larger area with sensory extension. And sense focusing allows you to finely tune what you take in and or detect. But if you live long enough and get good enough, you could essentially evolve all of your senses into a sixth sense that allows the user to acquire information by means independent of their previously known senses or experience with extrasensory perception. This is basically a psychic's go-to excuse for anything they do. That previously ability opens the door for others such as danger intuition, allowing the user to sense nearing danger, acute danger, potential and immediate danger, or impending danger and sense unwanted or hectic threats to their well-being and pretty much evade it. And since you can detect danger for yourself, it would make sense that you're able to do the same for other beings and objects. But why warn them when you can exploit that poorly healed wound, crippling pressure point, or locate various structural flaws for your own ends with weakness detection? And there you have it, a simple and sort of disappointing list of abilities associated with enhanced senses. But like I stated earlier, this ability is the base for all other sense-based powers that exist in popular culture. So expect videos on the other versions and associations. The main thing that needs to be remembered about an ability like this is that it really can exist without the other elements and or substances that make up the world, because that's what senses are needed for. So, if you face anyone who can hide their presence, manipulate the world, and or your perception of the world, they can give you symptoms ranging from simple confusion all the way to complete overload and or shutdown of your faculties. Hey, you might get lucky and not have that problem, right? Right? Well, here's another. You might have enhanced senses, but they might not be enhanced enough to make a difference. Or you'll have it in just a single or useless body part. And of course, the user's own skills, knowledge, and determination will determine how far you go with an ability like this. Good luck. And now, with all that out of the way, it's time to place this ability on the scale. Enhanced senses is as Charles Atlas as a superpower can get. You don't know what that is? Go back to the beginning of the video. I explained that pretty well. I don't think I know a single person who wouldn't want to hear or see just a little bit better. just a little bit. Or send something flying towards your head. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, the Shey scaling system gives this power a sensitive, oh my God, 8.5. I know what you're thinking. Everything needs senses, so why not a 10? To be honest with you guys, I really just can't get over the fact that this power has a potential crippling weakness that's dependent on other concepts, and it really can't exist on its own. But that's all I got to say about this power. Thanks for watching. You guys think of any more applications for this power? Jot it down in the comments section. Start a discussion. The index does not grow without you guys. I'll be back with an entirely new power, breakdown, and analysis fairly soon. Deuces.